Thanks very much. Welcome to Schools Forum on this very hot, sunny June day. Welcome to all my colleagues who are here. We have had several apologies for absence, but before we get going, we are recording this in line with the Council directives for online meetings. Please, you are more than welcome to turn your cameras off because sometimes that does affect the broadband uptake speed, and just use the hand up function, because then we can answer and challenge. So welcome to all those members of Bracknell Forest who are joining us as well. So Jamie, what apologies have we had? There's been a couple.
I have received apologies from Gareth Croxon, Tim Griffith, Catherine Forster, Rachel Manton, Sue Butler, and Jenny Baker is going to try and be here, but she might be running a bit late.
Thank you very much. So declarations of interest. So we're asking people to declare if they have an interest in any matter to be considered in this meeting. I have one. I'm very interested in item 7. Caroline,
As am I.
anyone else wish to declare an interest in? Trudy?
Yeah, I have interest in item 6.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. Right. So minutes and matters arising from last time. Reading through. Jamie, your actions are great. We had questions noted. I'm down onto page 5 now. So we agreed that we were going to make the decision about the funding arrangements for pupils not attending school due to medical reasons. We agreed to defer it to this one. So Dwayne, you're oh, thank you very much, Keith. You've declared an interest in item 7 too. Thank you. So Dwayne, you have a paper for today, which we'll present in a moment. So I won't do any more on that one. Then we had final proposals for high needs budget. We have resolved the thing, and then we have made some notes, and then we wanted to wait until the outcome of the Sen Ofsted inspection before we made a decision about whether to recommend 3.2. Jamie, has that decision been pushed to today? Jamie, has that decision that was under page 6, appropriate arrangements in place for pupils with children with SEN and the pupil referral units, that was deferred till today? Are we making a decision on that today, Jamie?
I can answer for Jamie. Liz, sorry, but it's yes.
Yes, it's a today decision. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. So let's go on to the first paper. So funding arrangements for pupils not attending school due to medical reasons. Over to you, Dwayne.
Yes, bear with me a minute. Thank you. Yeah, good evening, everybody, and hope we're all enjoying the weather. It is really hot. So this is a paper I brought to the Last Schools Forum. It's around the Section 19 duties for children, young people who were not able to attend school. And one of the sort of proposals of the paper is for the Schools Forum to agree that we can recoup money when the children and young people are medically unfit for school. From the last Schools Forum, I know colleagues were concerned about the pupil premium, so we have now removed the pupil premium from the calculations. I just want to highlight some of the children that have been there, and I just want to say we don't have any primary children there now. All our primary children have their needs met through AV1 robots. And that's no charge to the schools, so that is out in all our primary schools. So a big thank you to our primary schools. The vast majority of children are year 8s, 9s, 10s and 11s, of which out of the 9, 10s and 11s, just to give colleagues a bit of understanding, we've had one young child there for 3 years, we've had 3 children there for 2 years, and we've had 7 children for over a year now in the medical needs. So obviously, when the children are well enough to come back to school, then we will work with the schools for them to come back. We don't receive any funding from school for the children as yet, but we are proposing that we do recoup recoup a proportion of the OPU money as well as the notional 6,000 on a pro rata basis. At Schools Forum last time, you requested that we did the exit criteria and the entry criteria. And I've attached to the document the policy around Section 19 duties under the Education Act, and I've also attached to the paper the exit criteria for children and young people. So, you know, we are working with schools to make sure as soon as children are well enough, they come back. But it is about the recoupment of money and agreement from Schools Forum that we can put that in place.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to colleagues for comments, just thank you very much. It's really nice to see the methodology behind it. It helps create that transparency. So, colleagues. Grant,
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne, for listening to our feedback in the last meeting. Much appreciated. I mean, my biggest objection was the pupil premium money, and that's been removed. So I've got no objection to the proposal. I guess what I'm hoping is that when the local authority is beginning to get money, we might also look differently at some of the options for supporting children, that we don't become a one-trick pony, that it's robots or nothing, or tuition and nothing. And I know that Wokingham have got a slightly different model. Came up at the AP meeting I attended this morning about maybe looking differently at how we support children. So I hope this will help the local authority develop that service in a different way as well as what we've got now. But thank you, Dwayne, much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. And absolutely, Grant. This isn't one size fits all, and the guidance doesn't allow us to have a one size fits all, if I'm honest with you. So it is very individually based. We have online tuition, we have one-to-one tuition in the home. We have a centre now where the children can come to as well as the AB1 robot. So thank you for that.
So if there's no more comments, let's go on to the recommendations. So to agree the approach, the school contributed to redirection of pupil funding as those unable to attend school for medical reasons as set out in paragraph 5.16 and start in academic year 25-26. Just signal with hands or with voting. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Passed. Let's move on to agenda item 5. Thank you. I think that starts. Hey. Feroza, I think it might be you that's presenting.
No, this is me.
Jordan.
Is it you? Sorry, Jordan.
So this is the provisional outturn.
The next one.
And we're taking all the way down. We start on page 27 for those people who are reading along on screen. Talk us through.
So thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report that confirms the year-end spend on the school's budget and seeks agreement to the transfers to and from the earmarked reserves. That's being used as part of our normal close down of year end. So just want to note the draft 24-25 accounts confirms an £8.4 million overspend on the school's budgets. This is quite similar to last year where we had an 8.8 million, so slightly less. As stated in paragraph 6.6 on page 29, the 8.4 million overspend is before adding in our safety valve contribution from the DFE of 1.37 million and our own contribution of 431,000 as part of our arrangements with the DFE. So therefore, as you'll see in the table 1 at the bottom of the paper, the in-year overspend of 6.6 million is what you can see is being transferred to the DSG adjustment account. So yeah, just a few things to pull out really and highlight, because I know you've read it, but the overspend is on the High Needs block where we had 9.6 million overspend. And at the time of setting the budget in February 2024 as part of the council setting, we had a 6.5 million overspend. So this is obviously a worsening position of just over 3 million. We did, however, see a favourable movement of just over £1 million between period 11 forecasts and the draft outturn, so that was a positive. On page 30, so paragraph 6.9, it provides an explanation of any significant variances of the High Needs block overspend, and Annex A provides a high-level summary of the accounts. But unsurprisingly, we continue to see an increase in our EHCPs and the cost of our packages as well. The average cost has risen compared to 23-24. So both the increase and the spend mainly on independent special school placements just means that the funding we're getting in isn't keeping pace with the expenditure. I think, yeah, the report also outlines the changes to the budget made throughout the year. So any updates to the dedicated schools grant throughout the year. And as mentioned, the year-end transfers of balances within the school's budget revenue account, and the impact on remaining funds that are carried forward. So in table 1 of page 32 and annex B on page 28, you will see a breakdown of the different reserves and school accounts that we have, and what we're carrying forward into the next financial year. And I think finally, just to confirm the overall deficit on the school's budget into this financial year, it was 18 million, and then we carried forward into 25-26 an accumulated deficit of 24.6 million. So we still don't know what's going to happen with the statutory override. That's due to come to an end, but I think we'll obviously hopefully hear from the government soon, because that's a significant amount. But I think that's the main points of the paper, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Well summarised. I will hand over to colleagues in a moment, but obviously those big numbers translate into really difficult decisions and conversations to be had. We haven't had much more news. We've heard with the spending review that there will be more money, 750 million pumped into the SEN, but right now there are children who are needing to be placed outside of Bracknell. It is a difficult position to be in. I don't know whether Dwayne, whether you want to make any more comments after before we get going with colleagues, but this is one that I hear those big numbers, I hear them increasing, and I worry for our children.
Yeah. Do you want me to come in there, everybody? So in terms of just for colleagues to be aware, a bit of good news, because Ofsted have just signed off on the new school Horizons, and sorry, Hawthorne Academy, which is the SEMH school that Bracknell Forest Council have set up. As you know, colleagues, there is a temporary accommodation at College Hall this year, into next year, ready for the other building to be opened. I would encourage you to go and visit College Hall, and you know, in terms of if you've been there before, to see it now, because it has been refurbished, and that will open in September. So that's really good news. We still haven't heard anything from the Department for Education. I know we've had an open letter from overview and scrutiny go out into the public domain and to the Secretary of Education regarding news about Forest Fir at Butlers Park. But I am working with schools. There's been a desktop exercise to look at sufficiency across the borough, and I will be working with schools and primary schools to look at what we can do in the interim, and if there's any opportunities for us to open more provision locally within Bracknell. So, you know, I will be getting hold of people, and obviously I am meeting with heads as well over the next couple of weeks to sort of start doing some more work around that. But yeah, so it's not gone away, Liz. We are absolutely committed as a council to getting the provision locally, and we are looking at every avenue and exploring every avenue, whilst continuing to write to the DFE for news around Butlers Park.
Thank you very much, Ryan. So over to colleagues, let's do some specific challenges on elements that we want questions to, either now or in the next meeting. Grant, start us off, please.
So I guess I think the comment, I mean, you know, it would be nice to get some certainty, wouldn't it, from the DFE? I think, I'm sure my council colleagues would like that, and I think schools would. But I think my biggest fear is that 750 million just pays the debt. You know, you pay your credit card off, but if your day-to-day expenses exceed your income, you're just going to build the debt up again. I mean, without structural reform, without a massive change, we're just going to be back here again in a few years. I know that they did announce that there's going to be some big reforms, but we know how long that can take. So I think to take back, and I just noticed that Councillor Bailey's joined us. My big point is, I'm sure I speak for council as well as schools, is thank you for the extra money. Tell us about it, but I don't think it's actually going to make any difference because it will just pay the debt. But we need more than that.
Thank you very much, Grant. Very wise. I've got colleagues nodding. Anyone else want to make some comments? My question to think about for next time, can we have some details on number of families? You very kindly gave us to a few years ago, Dwayne, numbers of families sending outside of borough, because and then the approach for trying to persuade families that Bracknell is best. I know that's maybe a slogan that we want, but we want people to choose us. We don't want the monies hemorrhaging to provisions outside. And yes, that is part about the launch, but who is it, and what's the plan for encouraging them? Is it just at phase transfers? Anyone else?
Yeah,
Sorry,
can I just come in with that for clarity for colleagues? So, if you're on borders, families can on borders send children that are living in Wokingham to Bracknell schools, and we do the same. Yeah, so we have children living on border that might want a Wokingham school. So there's a difference between other authority schools to the independent non-maintained specialist sector, and I think that's the difference there, and that's where the costs are.
Yes, please. But just you very kindly presented that a couple of years ago to us, but probably as we just keep on going on it, we want to be promoting. We want and the information about how we communicate to parents that this is the right place to be. So recommendations, we have a few. So let's go for the outturn. We need to note that the outturn subject to audit is an overspending at 8.441 million. Thanks. So we note the main reasons for the budget variances. We do. People nodding for me. Cumulative 24.649 million deficit balance held by the unused DSG amount, for which currently rests the Department of Education until March 26. We're noting that. And our big question is, what happens after the 31st of March? Then the in-year funding transfers to and from earmark reserves are made in accordance with the relevant policies. And to provide schools forum with an update on the 25-26 high needs budget and announced in relation to the additional schools funding allocation 25-26 further down. Okay. And it's always interesting because quite often you give us alternatives, but under paragraph 5, alternative options considered, there is nothing else at the moment, and that is always telling of where we're up to actually. So there are no other options than saying yes, let's hold on. But Grant, your comments about it feels like a bit of a sticking plaster. We need complete shift with what we're doing. So thank you very much, colleagues who contributed to that. It's a really meaty paper. Maybe not the most professional words, a really well thought out paper. Thank you, Tim. Right, let's go down to the next page. I normally make notes of which page we're starting. We're starting on page 41. Who's presenting this one, please?
This will be for Rosa on the balances.
Rosa, welcome to the team.
Yes, you kind of fizzled out a little bit for a few seconds there, Liz. So this is the balances paper for all of our maintained schools. Obviously, it doesn't include any of the academies because we don't report on their balances. Overall, generally, the key takeaways are we had just over a million, just under 1,780,000 last year in brought forward schools balances. We're now down to 319. We are seeing more schools that have that have gone into a deficit position and are continuing to forecast a deficit position in 25-26. And we've got fewer schools with surpluses. So that's the key takeaway messages, really. If there are some specific questions that you'd like to ask on the revenue side, then I can discuss some of the capital bits.
Very much, Rosa. So Keith would like to start off.
Yeah, thank you. My first question is, are you able to tell us how many of those schools requested an extension on submitting their budget? Or how many?
My colleague Matt will
in the
just
normal
open up the
time period?
spreadsheet to give us that figure. I think from memory, I think we had about 6 schools that requested an extension to the end of July. Some of them we're working with very closely. When I say working, we're doing a lot more challenge around the assumptions that they're using in order to set those budgets.
So you haven't yet had all budget submissions then?
That's correct, we haven't.
So the data you've shared with us, the headline
These,
with us is just of those schools that you've received, correct?
no, this
No,
is
sorry.
purely just the balances as at the end of March 2024. The
Of all schools,
position.
of all schools.
Of all the schools, yes,
Thank
of
you.
all the schools. So within the report, there's an annex where a list of all of our maintained schools, Annex A, and that details what the balances were for each one. This is not to do with the budget setting, but where we are seeing more schools that have
This is carry forward or not?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I may have another question in a moment.
Thank you.
Matt, do you know how many? Can you just confirm if you open up that spreadsheet? Was it 6?
There were 6, yes, schools requested extensions.
I believe, Caroline, did you say you had a question earlier on item 7? I think this is item 7, isn't it?
No, this is agenda item 6.
Right.
Just a little bit. I think I was confused by the dates because I know that our position for this coming year is balanced, but I wasn't sure if the license deficits had to be including the carry forwards as well. So I was a bit confused by the table, to be honest. I wasn't quite sure what was included and what wasn't. That was it.
Yeah, that's just the school's final outturn position as at the end of March.
Thank you. Got that now.
Keith?
Yeah, so I think my final, it's not so much a question, but a request perhaps. Is it possible that we then can get an update maybe in September from you of the position of all those schools when you know they've all set their budgets? One thing which I think would be useful to the forum to build on the information you've shared then is of those schools who has managed to present a balanced budget.
Yes, so we'll be doing an update on all the schools after the budgets have been set for September forum. Anyway, we do like a round robin of the deficit position and what mitigations that certain schools are planning to put into place, because I think it's important for the community to understand, the forum community to understand what sort of challenges we're doing and where we're sort of directing schools to look at budgets more closely, and much of that will be staffing.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Rosa. Could I ask? I'm not sure whether this is even possible, but whether there is a way of assessing how much of the deficit position schools are in is down to the fact that the SEN notional budgets that schools have are actually exhausted by what they are currently supporting, and that so how much is the impact of SEN basically on these schools' deficits? Can we say that with any degree of statistical certainty or even anecdotal, to be honest?
Thank you.
We could. Sorry.
I think probably take some time to think about that one and bring it back.
Yeah.
That'd
I think,
be helpful. Thank you. Matt,
Sorry, I think it'll certainly be part of the discussion we have with individual schools
Mhm.
in terms of their individual circumstances, and we can certainly pull something, as it were, where schools believe that applies and where we've looked at it as well.
thank you. Grant, you have your hand up.
I'm not expecting an answer today, but I think in the future it might be worth it. Current rate of attrition on combined surpluses. At what point do all schools in Bracknell Forest have a net deficit?
You jumped in on my question, Grant. I'd quite like a graph.
We could do that. We could have that. It's certainly not something I can answer now, Grant. But we will bring that back in the September paper.
Sorry, I'm struggling to work out how to put my hand up, but yeah, I think that's definitely
Thank you, John.
something we've spoken about as a team, that we obviously do worry that when we do get all the budgets back, the likelihood is the overall position is a deficit, because we went from just over 1 million to 300,000. I think it's gone down about 1 million each financial year the last 2 years. I think 2 years ago we had 2 million. Some of that will be academisation, but still, that 300,000 will probably not last long.
And you could bring those elements, and you could allow for an amount of academisation to offset for your graph. But what I'd really like to know is, obviously, if the main hit is staffing, and that is inevitably the largest part of it, what risks are they taking on? What opportunities they're exploring when it is easy to slash a budget and make it zero, but at what cost? We're talking about children here and their lives and their livelihoods, and we could sit and make numbers as small as possible, but it is not then necessarily going to create stable, strong schools that attract children from our locality. It's going to make it harder and harder. So let's do some recommendations, please. So the key performance information, so we've got to note these information on school balances set out in 6.3. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I think Keith's got a question first.
Keith.
It's a point more than a question, perhaps. We've got to be careful here, because this is only part of the picture in Bracknell Forest. It is very difficult when we have an increasing number of schools who've now academised to be able to understand or get the same level of detail on the financial performance of those other schools. And so I think we've got to be a little bit cautious in drawing conclusions that essentially are based on about a third of the schools in Bracknell Forest, maybe not even that, actually. I think it's an important point to make, and I wonder, possibly not, but I do wonder if there's anything that we can do so that we can start to include schools that are under academy trusts within this conversation that is ensuing as a result of the paper that's been presented here, because I suspect that there are other sorts of pressures in some circumstances within some academy trusts, but nevertheless will tell a similar story, putting pressure in terms of what's happening. I think
it's a very wise request. So let's ask so Matt and Dwayne and Jordan, if you just draft just gently if there's a way to approach Academy Trust and say, would they be able to give some of these figures? I think it just helps all the children in Bracknell to have that transparency if it is possible. Feroza, you had a comment.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody recently saw the Panorama programme on academy balances. That a lot of the academies were sitting on significant balances. And I think there's something to be said about getting some of that shared across the maintained schools. I mean, we're talking about, lobbying central government. It's just right. It makes me sick, sorry. They've got millions and millions of balances that they're bringing forward.
I can say for my trust that is not true, but absolutely there will be some freedom of information where there is money sitting there, and that is part of the change that the government wants to bring in. But I can see some thumbs up and see some clappings. Absolutely, those sort of conversations need to be had. So let's go for school forum notes. So we have key performance of balances. We're talking about the aggregate surplus have decreased from 1 million to 0.319. That is a 71% decrease. The then second point, the value of the surplus balances across the same 8 schools is now 1.1 and a decrease of another 0.118 million since 23-24. Third point, value of the deficit balances across the same 11 schools is 0.813 million, which is an increase of 0.596 since 23-24. Worrying numbers, and I can see it in people's faces how they're feeling. There are 3 schools with significant surpluses balances which exceed the 8% and set up by the schools forum. The value of the surplus is around 0.726 million, and it's a reduction of 0.094, so 13%. So there are fewer people with significant surplus balances, but we've seen in the paper what they would like to spend it on. And then at 0.7 average balances is considered to be below the minimum level for working balances to safely cover on sort of foreseen circumstances. I wonder if there are more thoughts around 0.5. Not 0.7 average balances below the minimal level for required for working balances. Matt and Keith, do you want to start off then?
Yeah, we've had this discussion at governor level and senior team level in the last week, actually. I mean, once upon a time, someone shared with me that you probably want about a 2% contingency. And I don't know whether benchmarks like that these days are realistic, but I'd be interested to know what our finance officers would advise these days. We're not even getting close to 0.7%, I should add.
Thank you, Keith. Matt, you start.
I think that's a really good question, and I don't necessarily trying to decide or determine what a school's particular balance should be or is one of the things. I think what I'd suggest we bring back is a comparison to 2% and see how far adrift schools are from that. And sort of that might inform decision making consideration. And if we use that as a benchmark, I think that'd be useful to see what the journey may have to look like.
Thank you, Matt. That is really helpful. So we'll start. We'll look at maybe 2%. So Grant, your comments.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a maintained head being lucky to have a surplus at all in a 1-form entry primary as I was, and I and 2% would have been a dream. Interestingly, the trust I work for, we've actually mutualised our reserves. We've pooled them, so individual schools do not have an individual reserve. It is borne by the trust, and therefore what we're actually doing is mutualising the risk. So if I have a significant issue, we can pull upon the resources of the trust rather than actually I've got to pop myself. So I think in theory, actually, the SFA says that trusts should have 5% reserves, not 2%. But that in itself does suck money out. I think one of the other differences for trusts is that I believe that Academy Trust can invest that money. So of course, you can get some investment back from, if you've got 5% of a very large Academy Trust, you're probably earning some serious interest, even if you've got it stuck in a bank somewhere, which I'm assuming that councils can't do with its school grant. I don't know, maybe they can. But I think my general comment is about the direction of travel as more and more money is sucked out of the system. Below inflation increases from government, less high needs block money going in, greater demand, there's going to be a tipping point, and we can talk about 2%. I think we'll be sitting here next year and we'll be lucky to get close to 2% for most schools. That is my take.
Thank you, Grant. Back over to you, Keith.
Yeah, just to build on Grant's point, I think that was really interesting what you just set out there, Grant. I think the difficulty is across trusts nationally, but certainly locally, regionally, the range in terms of the top slice, the gag they take from schools is so vast.
Yep. Thank you. So we have one more agreement to make. So the entire significant surplus balance held by school up to the cap permitted of the clawback scheme has been assigned for relevant purposes as set out in the proof scheme and shouldn't be subject to clawback, paragraph 6.11. Everyone happy with that? Getting nods. Okay, 3 to pass, thank you. So let's go down to page 55. It's one where several people have declared an interest. Some really, some really detailed papers. Thank you so much to the teams who are presenting hours and hours and hours of work on it. But we're on to agenda item 7. So the funding allocations to mainstream schools are from budgets centrally managed by the council executive director for people. So we have lots of notes and we actually have some more approved. So who is presenting this one, please?
This will be myself.
Thank you, Jordan. Feroza has a hand up before you start.
Before you begin, I just wanted to make a point on the capital devolve formula capital at the back end of my paper. I just wanted to make a quick comment about it. There are about 7 schools that are in danger of losing the devolve formula capital money. That's about £74,000 if they don't spend it by the end of August. So I just think it's important that when you take these, when this report gets published, that those schools are aware.
Yeah, let's alert those pages we're talking about. Page 54, Annex F. Can that be sent out via email to all those relevant schools, Matt and Feroza? And
yeah,
there you go. I think just
no,
we do not want to lose a penny of CapEx money. It is such a wonderful source of funds. So Jordan, you're presenting funding allocations for us.
Yes, so I think you'll be aware of a lot of these centrally managed budgets by the council. But just to give an overview of the 24-25 position, we are used to fund targeted support to schools meeting the qualifying criteria. And in 24-25, we allocated 631,000, which was an overall spend of 52,000. So, and I believe the previous year it was just over 100,000. So we did pay out more of our centrally maintained budgets this year, which is good. It helps to fund unpredictable and sometimes significant additional costs that only a small number of schools will face, and which is where the simplified national funding formula doesn't quite cover these pressures. So as outlined in section 3.1, you can see the amounts we've distributed from the budget centrally maintained by the council. But this includes our growth, schools have a high proportion of SEN children and schools in financial difficulty. So the associated policies that provide consistency and transparency of operation are considered appropriate and fit for purpose. So we've not made any changes or proposed any changes for 25-26. So that's something I just wanted to highlight. Obviously, I've not been made aware of any concerns or issues, and I believe there was a finance consultation in 2023. So there was a few amendments made to some of the policies last year, but overall, I think they're considered to be robust and transparent policies. So we're looking at continuing with the same policies for 25-26. But you're happy to take any comments from forum and work that back with Dwayne and co if needed. I think that's really the gist of the report.
Thank you very much, Jordan. So comments from colleagues first. None particularly. Okay. So thank you very much. Obviously, it's a very rare paper where we don't make comments. So funding allocations made in accordance with approved policies. We're noting those funding allocations for the in-year growth, the new and expanding schools, for the disproportionate number of SEN, and for financial difficulties. Thank you. And then we're agreeing the following practice. Reapprove the policy for growth fund, SEN contingency, additional funds for schools facing financial difficulties, and reapprove for contingency allocations. Thumbs up and waves. Thank you. Approved unanimously. So alternative options, these were considered as part of last budget setting process, including not setting aside contingency funds with policy text note. Thank you very much. So we have come to the end of our meeting. That is a record time to come to it. Before we finish, and I'll let Grant, you say your comment in a
Sorry,
moment.
Chair, can I just clarify whether we were going to discuss and vote on whether there is suitable provision for SEN and AP in this meeting? So I thought you said we were going to, and I think Dwayne said we were going to, and I don't think we have, unless I dropped off.
No, so that was in part of the agenda. That was one of the actions after we had heard. It was on page 7 that defer a decision about recommendation 3.2 whether there's appropriate arrangement in place of education in pupils with SEN, and we were waiting until the inspection had been completed to vote on that, and we thought it was today.
Okay, I thought that was the medical needs that we've just agreed, Grant.
Okay, I think we'll have to push that one for next time.
That's fine. I
Is
just
that
feel like
okay?
we shouldn't forget
No,
that we need to do it and
No.
have that discussion.
No.
Perhaps it needs to be a formal agenda item rather than
an AOB.
matters arising type thing.
I think so. So Jamie, you and I can talk about making sure that it fits onto the next agenda. Much appreciated. So she is not here at the moment. Jenny is stepping down as vice chair of Schools Forum, so I will be looking for somebody to put themselves forward. I'm more than happy to put myself forward again as chair in September, but I do need somebody to be there in the background. But while she's not here, we just want to pass on huge thanks. She's going to stay on the committee, but being vice chair is I don't bend your ear too much, but it is a privilege to be part and serving. So I really would love somebody to come and team up with me. So Grant, thank you for the applause. And then we have our next meeting is 4:30, 18th of September 2025. Jamie, did we have any other AOBs?
Not for me, but I think Dwayne's got
Wayne,
a
I
hand
can
up.
see.
Yeah. Just for the forum, just to update the schools forum, I think a while ago you asked me to look at small schools strategy within the borough, and I've started that work now. So I've got a colleague of mine doing the desktop exercise at the moment in terms of schools, and we're working with admissions as well. And I will obviously work with school head and head teachers as we work through that strategy around the small schools. But I just wanted to update that I have got that now up and running, and should be able to produce the report on that for the schools forum.
Thank you very much. So enjoy trying to find somewhere cool. Thank you very much.
Good evening all. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks very much, everyone. Happy holidays.
That's right.